show. My name is Jeff Thomas. This is Financial Views with Local Brews. I'm happy to be sitting here at a tap room in downtown Indianapolis. Really cool concept. Xavier, Randall, Eric Foust, and they highlight a different craft brew from a different region each month. And this month is narrow gauge, so we have Jeff Hardesty, and from just a northern suburb of St. Louis in Florissant, Missouri. So with that, boys, cheers. Welcome. Thanks for doing this.
Cheers, man. Thanks for having us.
All right. Now, one of my favorite jump-off spots with anytime I start this is an origin story, right? So you guys have been in hospitality and various other lines of business throughout your careers, but how did a tap room come about? What's the backstory to it?
The joke we always kind of make is Eric used to live up in South Bend, and then he's wanted to open a bar for a while. I wanted to work for no other people for a while. So he came down here. We met through just beer industry stuff. He was repping for Bare Hands, and I was one of the managers over at Blackacre on the east side of Indianapolis, and there was some beer fest. It was for the east side of Indianapolis, but some reason Bare Hands was there, even though they're 3 hours away. And we kind of met through that, and we just started talking about a couple different ideas, and then I don't know, one day we were drinking, it was like a Super Bowl thing, football thing over his house or something, and we started drinking out of his cellar, and I started just rambling about, I don't want to have to drive all over the place to get beers anymore. That's our idea. Why don't we just do that? Why don't we just see if breweries will bring us their beer for a month, and it'll be like a 30-day tap takeover, and it'll be stuff that Indianapolis doesn't have, so we don't have to compete with existing craft beer bars. And it really just stemmed from me not wanting to drive places, which arguably we've driven substantially more since we started this. But that was
and
really
I wanted to open a bar, and I have my own business ventures. I couldn't handle it by myself, so it naturally made sense for the both of us to team up to do it together. So yeah.
Dumb idea.
Fantastic. Well, let's get Jeff's story. So talk about narrow gauge. How'd you guys come about? I've read a little bit about what you guys do just north of St. Louis there with being connected to a restaurant and whatnot, but how did narrow gauge come about, my man?
Yeah, so we're kind of a unique concept. So originally, pushing forward, trying to open up a brewery, my wife and I kind of came to the conclusion that we wanted to open up a brewery like 2013, 2014 range, and kind of started to put in the work, put everything together, try and figure out what we needed to do to be able to open up in rural Missouri is what we originally planned to do, which obviously that's not what we do now, being in a north suburb of St. Louis. But that was our original goals, was to kind of push forward with that. And we quickly realized that we weren't going to be able to get the loans we wanted. Neither of us had any experience in the industry, anything like that. So ended up kind of becoming friends with one of the owners of Cagino's, the restaurant we're inside. So Ben and I kept running into each other at beer festivals, beer releases. So a lot of the early on side project releases, I would run into Ben. We would have conversations. Never really about opening a brewery, anything like that. It was more like building up a friendship. And then as things kind of pushed on, I was pretty involved with a homebrew club in St. Louis called STL Hops Homebrew Club, which STL Hops was actually formed in the beginning days, and it was kind of like the early on trading forum for beers in St. Louis. Back when craft beer was pretty small, so the Homebrew Club was kind of a spin-off of that, and they would actually do yearly anniversary parties. So in particular, this one was at Perennial. Our Homebrew Club was there. I had a homebrew there, which ended up being a coconut porter, which was Copra, that we had here on tap this month. And Ben and Dave, two of my business partners, had it there and was like, holy shit, this is awesome. They were real excited about the beer. They were looking into kind of doing some other business ventures, and they're like, what do you think about trying to team up on this project? And it was kind of a good situation for both of us. Like, we didn't have the understanding of running like a restaurant or a tap room, anything like that. So it kind of gave us a nice outlet of bringing in two other people that have had experience of running a craft beer bar. At the time, Cagino's had 54 craft beer taps. Well, they weren't all craft beer, but mostly craft beer taps. So they kind of had a knowledge to it, and it ended up we kind of cornered out a small section of the basement they had in the restaurant and decided, let's put the brewery in a basement, which they originally pitched that idea to me, and I'm like, nah, I don't want to go in a basement. And it ended up being like, this space could work. So and they've
Now
done
you're
that, they've
now
done
you're
this,
in a-
and
now
like,
you're in a
it no
big-
longer works. But,
Yeah, you're.
like, it was an awesome way to start. Like,
I don't know how you got all that stuff down there.
yeah, like we were one of the first breweries to kind of do like the joint space thing. So like I take pride in that, and it worked out extremely well for both of us. Like, we got to the point of starting the brewery pretty cheap. We didn't have to build out a building, anything like that, other than like convert the space. But I started as a home brewer, so that's how I got into brewing.
Right on. Well, how'd you guys get connected to, select Narrow Gauge to be this month's?
I've been going to Narrow Gauge for
Since
years,
they opened.
pretty much since
Yeah.
they opened. And we were out. We went to lunch today, and Jeff had mentioned that he hasn't really been to Indianapolis in a long time. He just like passes through. I said something about Blackacre. He's like, "Oh, I remember. I served him at Blackacre in like 2017, 2018, like the end of 2017." And I knew I had served people from Narrow Gauge because I'd been down the year before. Abraxas was releasing. It's like my brother's favorite beer of all time, and he needed a proxy, and I had nothing to do and love going to things that I don't have to pay for. And he's like, "We're stopping at Narrow Gauge. They've got the Italian restaurant next to him. They got Narrow Gauge next to him. Done." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." And so when they came up to Blackacre, I was like, "Oh, these guys are great," and I started like showing their beers to all the people there and all that. And then not once did I ever ask him about that this entire time.
Yeah. But, and then I think like when we first started talking, it was very weird. Like, we were already Facebook friends just because I worked at a brewery, but we never had actually met each other. But I was like, their fucking beers are great. And then when we started talking about opening the thing, again, it was a joke.
Let's see if we can get perennial in Narrow Gauge.
No, it was a joke. When he was at my house, we had talked about it, and then like it turned into like, we'll just call it a tap room because we're not really anything. And then like a couple weeks went by, and then I talked to him. I go, "Hey man, I think this could work." I was like, I hit up a couple of different people that I know, and I was like, I don't want to make your head too big, but when I said I talked to Jeff at Narrow Gauge, and he said he was going to be cool with it, I think we can make a business work out of just getting different breweries to do it. I was like, if Jeff says yes, I think we can get a bunch of people to say yes.
But I didn't even know, and I was telling him this too. I was like, once I know something, I take no extra time out of my life to figure anything else out because I know what I know.
Sure.
So I know Narrow Gauge from going pretty much when they opened, and that was it. I just assumed it was in some suburb of St. Louis. It wasn't side project. It wasn't perennial. It wasn't, Schlafly. It wasn't all these places that have been around or have a big enough name or whatever in my head because they were new. Like, these guys make better New England IPAs than anything I've had up in Indianapolis because that was still like the early stages of New England's in general. I'm like, these are fucking awesome. So every time I went to St. Louis, I would drink there. So when he told me that Narrow Gauge was on board, in my head, I'm thinking, why would they not be there? A small brewery outside of St. Louis. This is probably a pretty good opportunity for them, which seems arrogant and shitty.
I mean, that's how I look at it.
To think about it like now, and then we started releasing all this stuff on there about Narrow Gauge, and I saw the hype for it.
And we
did something.
literally went like we didn't even know. I knew nobody from Perennial. We went there to meet with him, and then Drew Fox from 18th Street gave me Phil, one of the owners of Perennial, his information. So we made like a dual trip.
We try to cluster; it makes delivery easier. But
Sure.
St. Louis, the whole point of St. Louis was Narrow Gauges. IPAs are his thing. They're not typically mine, which was more impressive to him, I think, when I was like, oh, dude, Cloud City and Fallen Flag are incredible. He's like, you don't usually drink IPAs. I'm like, I don't drink them unless they're really good. But they started doing a stout program, and every stout that I had for the couple years leading up to it. So it kind of ticked a lot of our boxes. And then when we talked to them, we found they like meads, and they're developing more like their sour program. It was like, oh, this is great. So it was really just, who do we love to go to that's within 5 hours of our house?
Yeah.
And narrow gauge was never not on that list when we started talking about states and cities and stuff like that. The minute we got to St. Louis, it was narrow gauge, then perennial. And then we joked about side product, and we had to charge everybody $100 for a taster because I can't imagine how expensive any of that would be. But yeah.
I gotcha. Well, we all love craft brew. That's why that's why I like talking to you guys. That's why you have this establishments or whatnot. But what was the first craft beer that hooked you? You know, because when I was in college, it was just like, just drink the dirt shit, and I can get a case of Natty Light for $12 in college. But then I had a fat tire, and
Natty Light
still Natty Light
an
fan.
exceptional
I drink
summer beer when
more
you're
Natty Light in college than anything else.
Yeah, or Ice House, which we called Ass
Ice
House.
Day.
You drink too much, you piss out your
Natty
ass the
Ice.
next day. For me, it was Fat Tire because I grew up in Florida, so there wasn't a lot of different craft brews, and of course Sam had their stuff in Sierra Nevada, but Fat Tire was the one where I was like, that's crazy different. What was it for you?
I drank a lot of Boston Lager.
Yeah.
And then I lived in Portland, but I moved when I was like 22, so it was like you'd hear about craft beer, and then I moved back, and then drank a lot of Boston Lager, and then I will say, like, me working at Bare Hands, or me discovering Bare Hands was like huge in that area. It was, 2011 when they opened. I probably knew about them mid 2012, and yeah, just going to the local liquor store, being part of like the mix your own 4-pack like month club. You pay like $30 a month or whatever, and they just give you a box of stuff and you just try it. So
How about you, Jeff?
Mine's the same as yours. So
Yeah.
the first craft beer I ever had was Fat Tire, which was when I was in college, and it was like let's spend a little extra money, get better beer, and we got Fat Tire, and like it was a great beer. I didn't really jump into craft beer too much at that point until I actually started homebrewing. So when I started homebrewing, it was more like the nerdy science aspect of it. So I wasn't super into craft beer at the time, but the need for bottles that I could cap that weren't like twist off. So like I couldn't drink Bud Light and recap them, anything like that. So and like buying empty bottles was damn near the same price as buying full bottles. So like that kind of sparked my interest in craft beer. So I kind of used that as an outlet of like I want to try a bunch of different beers, and New Belgium was like the first brewery I ran the gamut on. So anything New Belgium, I would buy a 6-pack, drink it. To gain bottles, try different beers, which I don't think at the time I realized what I was doing was like trying a bunch of different beers, but that is what I was doing. Same thing with like Schlafly. So like Schlafly had like $11 12-pack bottle mix sampler of all their beers. So like I don't know how many of those I drank. Same thing with like Founders at the time. So
Sure.
I ran pretty much the whole product line of New Belgium, Founders, Schlafly, like trying to get more or less bottles for homebrewing, which in turn like kept like digging that hole and trying more stuff, and it became an obsession.
You
for
being
sure.
you being a nerdy obsessive person,
Yeah.
I don't see that whatsoever.
How about you, Xavier? What was your hook?
Right. So I didn't actually drink until I was 21. So I had a bunch of friends that had been doing the whole shitty beer thing for a really long time, and they were starting to drink better beer. I could not figure out why the hell anybody liked beer at all. Every time I drank it, this doesn't taste like candy. I don't want it. Like if it wasn't like a mixed drink, I wasn't about it. And then I went to Outback with a buddy from high school, and they had cream ale from Sun King, and I already know that's fine. But I tasted it, and I was like, oh, this doesn't taste like
Yeah.
Garbage.
absolute dog shit. I'm like, this is actually, I don't even know why I ordered it. I think it's because he ordered one, and I was just so sick of people talking shit to me about only ordering like Sex on the Beach or whatever fruity thing I could drink, because I'm like, I just want the alcohol and for it to taste like candy, which has developed a lot of match my actual.
That's the
craft
way.
beer
That's the way he
style.
drinks beer. Yeah.
If it doesn't give me diabetes, I don't want it. But so Cream Ale from Sun King was really the first beer I tried that I didn't like, or that I did like, and then my brother was super into craft beer. He went to Purdue, and he joined up a group of people up there, and
Then he worked at Hopcat.
He worked at Hopcat, but he met Jesse Rice up at Purdue, like the guy that owns like Black Circle and Loom and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's known him for a really long time. They had this beer group up there, and he invited me up there one day, and he looked me in the face and goes, "You don't like this shit? You're here to have fun with us. You can drink what we don't drink." So I'm sitting at the end of the table just drinking the dregs of whatever's left in these bottles. I'm like, none of these taste bad. This is incredible. So when he invited me to Winterfest that year, I just been walking around. I was trying stuff. Some stuff was good.
Winterfest is the Indiana.
Yeah, if anybody listening is not from Indianapolis, we have 2 annual beer festivals. One of them is right before Super Bowl Sunday, and then the other one's in the summer. And it's just all the breweries from the state and close to it do a bunch of huge beer fest thing. And I've been walking around. It was the end of the night, and Blackacre was there, and everybody's in jumpsuits like they're from Top Gun. So I was just like, this is an interesting place. And I walked over there, and they had a Belgian whip beer that they put Earl Grey tea in.
Oh, wow.
Incredible. I was like, this is what people can do. They can add stuff to beer so that it doesn't taste like kind of sour vomit. This is great. Their anniversary was about a week and a half after that, and one of our bartenders actually has worked at Blackacre, and she worked with me, and she was my boss for a little bit. She started serving there the first anniversary I went to, and I found a booth and I sat there, and she said something to me about, oh, do you have more people coming? I'm like, yes, I will be here all day. She didn't think I would be, and I got there at noon, and I left at midnight, and I tried every single thing that they released all day, and most of it. So I mean, I really credit, unfortunately, Sun King Cream Ale to show me that beer doesn't have to taste bad, but then Blackacre really showed me that you can add
And then you worked at Blackacre.
And then I worked there because it was really what got me into craft beer. So I mean, the minute you can add stuff to beer, I was like, oh, this changes the game. This is a real thing. It's not just my grandpa has an empty 12-pack of Bud Light sitting around the house because he just drinks that like it's water. So I mean, yeah, adjuncts. Best part of beer.
That's it.
More adjectives, the better Xavier likes them.
That is true.
Well, that kind of bleeds into the next question. Like, what I like about the craft brew space is the creativity that goes into a lot of the names. You know, as I'm drinking a wide brand here, you know, as far as how you guys come up with the names of the beer, Jeff, what's Narrow Gauge's kind of methodology behind the names?
Yeah, so we kind of run the gamut on that. So we like wide band was something that came from Eric. Like that was a suggestion from him. So anytime we're doing a collab, like I hate naming beers, so the first thing I try to do is pawn off that test so I don't have to deal with it.
Dope.
But like
I don't even know how I came up with that. I think it was just the fact that like I am also kind of a nerd, and so like that's a term like ultra wide band, like in cell stuff. Like wide band is just the term in audio, and sometimes like frequency waves, and that's what the label is and stuff. So I don't know. And it fit their like already kind of black and white, like kind of their theme of beers. Sorry, we have people walking through the scene. We still are conducting business.
It's all
right
good,
now,
man.
So,
no,
that's why we have multicam. We can, you know.
Yeah, it gave me a good thing to run with. So like he kind of came up with the idea and the concept, so like I could build a label out of it. But as far as like other beers, some of them stint back to more like historical names. So like Fallen Flag, which is like our flagship IPA, actually kind of is an ode to the name of the brewery, Narrow Gauge. A Fallen Flag's basically a no longer in service railroad station. So within St. Louis or within Florissant where we were at, the narrow gauge railroad station still exists. So you can still visit what that railroad station is. It isn't where it was at the time, but it is still a building you can see, and that technically is a fallen flag. So, like, that beer name comes from a historic tie, whereas we have beer names like OJ Run. So, like, most people think, like, OJ Simpson, like, he's on the run in the White Bronco, and that nothing to do with that beer name.
Okay.
So, OJ Run.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So I don't even know if you guys know what OJ Run is.
I
If
have-
explain to you guys what OJ Run is?
I'm only,
From-
just
no.
so you know, I'm only telling people now if they ever ask me. I'm like, remember when O.J. Simpson founded his family? It's basically he was running from the police. That's all I'm telling people.
Yeah, like people like tie that. And I'm like, why would I name a beer?
There's an
tie
orange-
to
I
this
assume
dude that-
somebody-
It was a running back too, so he
Yeah.
historically
I assumed
runs.
Somebody needed orange juice. Somebody said I gotta go on an O.J. run. and
That's
then-
more what I thought people would take.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought the whole time. Was somebody needed orange juice.
You're going on a beer run, but if you don't drink beer, you're going on an orange juice run.
So that's what I thought
Moses
most
ordered.
people would believe that beer, because like you look at the beer, it kind of looks like orange juice, but in actuality, it's a reference to a road in Florissant called Old Jamestown. So there's like country roads of Florissant. There's a road called Old Jamestown that's probably about 3 miles long. So it runs kind of down the bluff area of like Missouri River. So in high school, kids would go on OJ runs. So they would basically ride the whole length of Old Jamestown, and smoke a joint. So they would call that an OJ run. So like that's where that name comes from. We have one like Rocket Appliances, which is a Trailer Park Boys reference. So we have musical references, we have movie references, we have city references. Kind of like I said, I hate naming beers, so if I can find something to latch on to help me do that, that's generally what I do, and it typically leans into the things that I enjoy. So I enjoy music, I enjoy movies, I enjoy smoking weed with friends, like all of it. So it all kind of ties together.
Fantastic. Well, you guys have, both of you guys have worked in various different spots and seen a lot of good beer come through, and I'm sure you tasted some bad beer. Jeff, I'm sure with a homebrewing background,
Yeah.
you know, what's on the marquee up there are your successes, right? But,
Sure.
you know, successes come out of failures sometimes. What's a fun story around maybe a failure that you had that maybe led to something that's in your lineup today? And for you two, what, you know, when you have somebody come in that says, hey, this is a new beer of the month, we're going to try this, and then, you know, you can't really push it because you don't have the confidence in it. So what would you say?
Oh, I will say first off, that does not happen because people ask us all the time, how do you pick the brewery? How do you do this? How do you do that? And a lot of people think because we use Untapped as our menu board that we look at Untapped ratings to decide if we want to pick a brewery or not. And I'm not going to say that won't ever play a part in it because there's a bunch of breweries out
6,000
there and we
breweries
only
and-
know what we know. But everybody we picked so far, it's because we believed in their brand and their product. So we didn't curate anything based off of ratings. But if we picked a brewery, it's because we know that the beer's usually like him. So we're not, I don't think we've had a beer on at all that somebody's drank and been like, this is bad. Now he deals more with the hoppy side of things. I'm not the go-to on that.
Just sit right down here in the middle. Get over
And
here.
you just want to sit on the floor? You have actually part of this too.
Get in
We
here.
got space for it.
What are you drinking that's so dark? That is a full
It's a beer
pour.
was on draft from narrow gauge.
Perfect. That sounds
Probably
so good.
Baltic Porter.
Yeah. Oh, that would make more sense. I don't know what's here. I don't work here. It's
The
fine.
more the merrier. We're adding guests as we do this, my man.
We'll explain who this is in a moment because he was
Okay.
actually very crucial
To our
to our
business venture.
our success as it is now. But yeah, we didn't pick people that we don't believe in their product. And if I believe in your product, there's never an opportunity where I'm going to try to sell something that I don't believe in. Hoppier stuff, Eric will drink. Darker stuff, I will drink. We're both pretty even on like our mid malts and we
Sours
call them
and-
crispy boys for our, like our lagers and stuff. Like we both have drank enough and worked enough in the industry. We know what something is supposed to taste like
Yeah.
or all flavors or things like that. So I mean, It hasn't happened yet. There hasn't been a brewery. There's been times where someone's like, would you drink this? I'm like, would I drink it? No. If you like this style of beer, they killed it. This is just not my go-to. So for us, I don't think that's a question I can't answer that because I don't think we've put anything on that I wouldn't
Drink.
That I wouldn't drink or get behind from that kind of standpoint because this is a passion project for us. I mean, it's beer, man. Like this is what we've spent our own money on. This is what we spent our own time on. This is what we did for somebody else to pay us. You know, him a bit longer than I did, but you know, I don't go into this ever thinking I'm not going to back somebody's product because at the end of the day, even if it's something that may be, we'll say subpar, since that feels like a better word than bad. These breweries took a chance on us to do something that no one else is doing. Mm-hmm. So I would never push something that I don't believe in, which is zero of the breweries we have, or even the ones we have lined up. Which I don't know if that really answers your question. I feel
no, it does because you guys are curating the scene.
I mean, you have to think like we had Listerman in August, super stout and super pastry stout heavy, dark beers, things like that. Narrow Gauge is a super New England style IPA heavy, but we try to pick breweries that also can provide. Every brewery focuses on like one style of beer that they're really, really good at, but then also provide a range of styles that are all still fabulous beers, but that's not what like brought them, I guess, to fame. Mm. If that's a good way to put it, you know, like
no, 100%. Like
I mean,
that's
your dark mild beer was fabulous.
Do people come to your door and pound on your door and be like, Jeff, give me more dark mild? But we show up and we say, hey, give me with a malty backbone. Like,
give me more dark mild beers at 3.2%.
You're like, I have this thing that, is this what you're looking for? We're like,
I'm gonna go grab a lager out of the cooler.
Why don't we take we're right at the camera shutting off, so why don't we take a break, refill the beers, and come back?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
That work? All right, well, introduce me to Eddie, man.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Before the break, you asked Jeff about some bad beers that he had done.
Oh, yes, I'd love to hear this story.
Excited to do that.
Yes.
He wanted to tell you about all the bad beer before the good beer ended up happening.
Yeah, let's hear a fun story around a crash and burn.
Oh shit. So we try and dump all the stuff that sucks, but there are the occasions that I think a beer is good and it should go, and the market tells me it shouldn't have gone. And I've had a couple beers.
Wait! You dump beer?
Oh yeah.
Don't tell me that.
If a beer doesn't meet our like,
but that doesn't happen very often, does it?
No.
Okay, good. Okay.
Not very often at all. So. Like we've made like within the beer industry, there's always like I want to try something different. So like one of the first beers that we made as Narrow Gauge that was a flop was a like super low ABV hazy IPA. So I had the mentality like I want to make a 3 to 3.5% hazy IPA. Maybe it's a blonde, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Like you can take any name that it wants. So the idea was like, I want to make this real low ABV beer you can drink all day, and we'll call it Hop Water, which is a terrible name in its own. Like people hated it because of the name. They hated it. Which there's like a bunch of hop waters now. I think Lagunitas makes a hop water. Urban Chestnut in St. Louis is making a hop water. But we made this like 3-ish% IPA called Hop Water, and I'm like, this is awesome for 3%. But the problem is we still put the same amount of hops in it that we put in a 7% beer, which is the bulk of the cost.
Wow.
So like we can't charge
$4
a tiny amount for this 4-pack.
Yeah.
And actually make money. And like
was it good though?
Like for what it was, like I was extremely happy with how it turned
out.
Oh,
okay.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have released it.
Okay.
But like,
because that just sounds like, oh man, that's hoppy as fuck with no backbone whatsoever. But
which it was that way to a degree. So like it finished a little dry, drier than what I was shooting for, but not like super dry. But like people wrecked that beer. They fucking hated it. And that was definitely like the first beer we flopped on as a brewery, and it was like, it didn't feel good. Don't get me wrong. Like the first beer you make that, like, the overall consensus is it sucks. It wasn't an enjoyable feeling. So that was kind of like the first foray into a beer that wasn't good. Like, obviously there was homebrews, but that was me in my basement.
Sure.
Afraid to share this beer with anyone, so it didn't matter anyways. I was the only guy that knew it sucked. Whereas, like, hundreds of people, thousands of people, how many ever people tried that beer and thought it sucked.
But you were still in a basement, though. So.
Oh, yeah.
True. Yeah, so all in all, you're always in a basement. We're in a basement right now.
Yeah.
We are. Yeah.
Indeed.
Jeff
So,
shows out,
but-
basement town.
Yeah.
But I'm also in the mentality, like, if you're going about that, and if you never make a beer that people don't like, then you're not kind of pushing the boundaries of what
Sure.
you're going to do. So, like, the beers that we've had flopped were, like, we want to push an extreme idea and try something different. And sometimes it kicks ass, sometimes it doesn't. Like, the Dark Mild was a very scary thing. Like, it was the first beer we did under 3.5% in a long time, and it was, like, a passion project of mine.
Very good, though.
Thank you. Like that's it's a big project of mine. Is I want to make every single style of beer in the BJCP guidelines, and that was one that's been on my radar for a while. And I want to do this as traditional to style. Do I know what people are gonna think of it? No. It could flop, it could not. And like that was a success story versus like some of the ones that are like people are gonna fucking be thrilled about this. They hate it. So like.
Yeah, you learn to listen to your audience, right?
For sure, and I mean, if you want to go about your passions, you're always gonna have failures. So if you're not willing to accept your failures, then you should probably move on.
Sure.
Like
Not do
maybe
that.
that's harsh, but
It's fun
I
being a
know
mad
I'm
scientist.
gonna make a shitty beer again. Like it happens. Like
Yeah.
we make mediocre beers, we make great beers, we make shitty beers. It is what it is, but. It's all a matter of kind of like pushing what you want to do and trying different things, and whether that's traditional or something innovative that you want to try.
I think a lot of the problem is too is like in the beer industry now, it's like so many people are on Untapped and things like that. Like they're too many people judge stuff that they can't judge thing on stylistically being correct.
Yeah, Untapped's a tough one where like a New England style IPAs, which is predominantly what we make, is in the 4 to 5 range. Like if you have a New England style IPA and it doesn't fall within the 4 to 5 star range, like it sucks. Which you can make the best lager in the world and it's a 3.75, and that's like prime.
The best one ever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like
You get a 3.4 lager, and you're like, that's a really good
Yeah.
lager. It's like Rotten Tomatoes with comedies. If they're
Yeah.
over 22%, they're probably insanely good. But if they're at least over 8%, it's worth going to the movies
Yeah.
to watch it. It's a really weird scale for things.
yeah, and that's honestly what I hate about Untapped. Like I get what it is, I get why people enjoy it. It's a good way to log your stuff, but like there's a lot of unfair treatment towards categories, and I see like great breweries. Like there's breweries that make only those styles of beers, and they carry a 3.75 rating, and for the beers they make, that's an insanely good rating. Whereas like the breweries that are making only a certain style of beer, that are the hype beers, they're rated a 4.2, like where we're at, and most of our beers were New England styles, and we continue to try and roll stuff in. But like if we were not making those beers, we wouldn't hold a 4.2, and I know that. So like if it was all the traditional style beers, and you look at that as a rating whole, like we're probably sitting at a 3.7 as well, and that's kind of a little bit of an unfair advantage.
Understood. So how does Eddie fit into you guys' relationship here?
So I'm going to start this off with, I'm not sure the last name they keep telling me is his actual last name. There's no way it is at all.
I wasn't born Eddie.
That's not what I was talking
Or
about.
Edward.
So,
Kevin.
Oh, okay.
is your middle name Eddie or Edward?
That's Scott.
The fuck did Eddie come from?
We'll
I
talk-
don't know
we'll talk
anything.
later.
I don't know anything about Eddie. Apparently, This is Eddie.
Were you a Maiden fan? You're an Iron Maiden fan? You just...
You want to look at the zombie? You want to look at the undead mask?
Eddie Chimi from the Five Heartbeats, man.
I don't know what any of those words meant.
Probably before you were born. I don't either.
Robert
but-
Townsend.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, it's one of his movies. It's fantastic.
No.
Watch it.
Okay.
Great soundtrack.
Perfect. I will accept that as fact because I'm never going to do it. That being said, Eddie. I say Eddie is Craftroads. That's wrong. Eddie works there in a higher up capacity, but they are our distributors who are helping us make sure we get the beer into the state since
that
Indy's
we want.
Yeah, Indy's a 3-tier system, so you have to go brewery, I'll say middleman, and then
Us.
the account. So
Right.
since we are not a brewery, we don't make our own stuff. We have to get everything sent to us. We have to do that through a distributor
If it comes from
unless
out of
they
state.
are unless they are in state, and we have had some breweries from in state that do self distribution, and we can just get them to bring us the beer then. But otherwise, we have to go through Eddie. So Eddie has put up with Eric and I's bullshit since Jesus Christ, December. Because we keep telling people, we're like, hey, we open in April. And then I'm like, well, I'm way more tired than opening in April. And it's because Eric and I did our articles of incorporation the weekend after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Or no, like the Wednesday after Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
Like a week
It was
after
in
Thanksgiving.
November, yeah.
We did our articles of incorporation. I made this whole thing with my wife that by the time I'm 30, I'm not gonna, if I haven't opened a bar, I'm not going to do it. And he texted me about 3 days before my birthday and goes, we have an idea that's going to work. So I was like, cool. I'll have been 30 for 1 week. I consider that a success because me and my brother talked about it forever, and then he decided he wanted to sell cell phones, which biggest industry in the world. That's fine. So now Eric gets to be part of my family, whether or not my wife is a fan of that.
My wife's
but
not
we
really a
needed-
fan of you being a part of our family either. So
I wouldn't.
we're both terrible people,
I wouldn't put that on anybody.
and our wife shouldn't even put up with us. But
Yeah.
here they are.
But we had to go to Eddie before we
The-
really got the ball rolling. Like, really all we did was our articles of incorporation. We wanted to make sure, since a tap room was just so generic, which is one of those that's like, it's so generic, nobody picked it, because why the hell would you do that?
Yeah.
People would confuse.
Taproom.com. How did I buy that?
For-
I don't know.
yeah.
For $15.
Yeah.
It was dumb.
Because it's confusing, and most people wouldn't do it, and I thought it was funny, and it happened. And I know this is a citation off of Eddie, but this is one of my favorite stories ever. The whole thing for the tap room thing was always the who's on first, like Abbott and Costello
Sure.
thing. And I thought, he said something, I go, first off for us, we're nobody. I go, we have no branding, we have no anything. We are a satellite tap room for the brands we want to bring in, we want to showcase them, and we want them to know that we are not trying to interfere with any part of their branding. Like, you'll walk up there, and obviously our art's on the walls, and we let our bartenders or whoever's working pick the music, and that may not always fall in line with what the brewery wants, but from a we are this brewery standpoint, that was super important. So I'm like, we're generic, we're nobody. And the second part of that is like, I want to confuse everyone when they say, where are you? And somebody says, a tap room, and they're like, but where? And I was like, it's like, who's on first? Which, from a business standpoint, looking back on it now, is kind of dumb, because people literally don't know who or what we are or where we are. But a guy was on his cell phone in here, May or June, and he's talking to somebody, and he goes, I'm at a tap room, and then I don't know what the other person said. I'm not on the phone, but I hear him go, no, that's the name of it. I'm not telling you where I am because I don't want you to know where I am. I'm at a tap room. It is on Delaware Street. That is the name of it. A tap room. Why would I lie about that? And he's just yelling at this person on the phone because they're so confused and think that he's being dishonest. And I'm like, if that never happens again, it happened one time, and that is perfect. So that's where the name came in. Talking about, we had to go to Eddie before.
Even before we did anything, I said, Eddie, can you make this happen for us, or we don't have a business?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
we
wait,
really
more
just had
importantly, I thought it was a tap room.
What did I say?
A tap room?
A tap room, a tap
okay.
room.
So
Either
you're
way.
saying
Tomato, tomato.
ABC versus ABC.
It's like Xavier, Xavier. We'll accept both.
I
we
never
don't care.
know. People ask me.
Your name's
I don't
Xavier?
care. Yeah, right. I don't have
No idea.
Just
Next
show
is
up.
silence.
But yeah, we basically signed our articles of
Silence.
incorporation just to make sure our names and everything were good. he's known Eddie for a while. I've known of Eddie. I didn't know him before this, but basically once we started, we were just like, hey, if you can't do this, we've got a fun URL and a cool LLC name, but we don't have a business. So Eddie being able, where were you, Starlight before this?
Yeah, I've been in the industry 22 years, and if I've learned anything, is that I don't know anything. I have no idea what's working in today's world. It's, the tail's wagging the dog.
Yeah.
Consumers are deciding
for
what beer
sure.
works and what's happening. But
Like we see that every day.
yeah, one of the biggest threats to the industry is wholesaler consolidation. We have fewer wholesalers now than we've had in decades, and that's increasing. It's in all industries, consolidation is happening.
Sure.
And it's a challenge. And so we're a small wholesaler here in the state of Indiana. And the larger wholesalers, they wouldn't want to work with this model. It doesn't work for them. Like, they want to do higher volume. It takes a lot of work to set up individual products and brands within our software and get all that set up. So it's not a financial move for us. What it is helping small businesses come together, and it's all about people. The beer business is about people. So it's getting great beer to more people and helping to elevate beer. Beer's been under attack by the spirits industry for decades, spirits and wine, and beer sales continue to decline. So we need a bigger variety and more excitement to bring people back into the beer category. So we're happy to be a part of that. I'm happy to be a part of that and work with these two. Are a pleasure. They think they frustrate me.
Again, that's a funny word.
They don't. They're a true pleasure, and they're doing something that I love and I appreciate that's happening in our market, and helping bring great brands in as well. So I like to give them a hard time sometimes, but I'm really happy to help them out.
Yeah, it just means more people in Indiana exposed to better beer. I mean, you go around to other places and it's insane. I think a big shift in Indiana changed 3 years ago now with Sunday sales. I think a lot of the reason a lot of bigger brands didn't come to the state of Indiana is because you had 52 days out of the year that were dead shelf space, right? You couldn't sell on Sunday.
Yeah.
So you had 52, you had 1/7 of the year you can't sell product. And so now Indiana is now just becoming a place where all of these other medium to large craft breweries that are big in the game, that are like, oh, well, we can, like, there's plenty of them that are in way across the country that are in Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Illinois, but they're not in Indiana.
That was a culture shock to
they're
me.
all around.
Moving up from Florida was couldn't go buy a beer on Sunday unless I went straight to the brewery, which there were very few that were open on Sundays. So that was a culture shock to me. I'm like, what the hell? I can't. Or if I have to go to a gas station, then I got to get it warm, and that made no sense to me.
We're the only state that still regulates beer sales by temperature.
Yeah.
And beer freshness matters, and storage temperature matters, particularly with the hazy IPAs that are out there now, and the heavy hopped beers. But most of the beer sold, or a huge amount of the beer sold in the state of Indiana, is not sold cold. So it's like putting gallons of milk out there and not putting it refrigerated, and that's an extreme example.
It's
but
pasteurized. It can be warm milk.
yeah.
I can't. Anytime I go, like, for my son's lunch, there's chocolate milks that he really likes, but they're shelf stable and they're just on the shelf at Kroger. And every time I buy them, I refrigerate them. But just knowing that if I didn't, he could drink them never in the refrigerator creeps me out. Don't like it. Get Go's helped us a lot though, because they're a restaurant. So any Get Go that's eating all the Rickers up, they sell all their beer in the fridge because they can, because they're a restaurant. They're not a convenience store. They're a restaurant because they serve hot food. So yay for Indiana loopholes. But yeah, like Eric was saying, I think Indy's a really underserved market for variety, whether it is a perceived issue or a functional issue. When we started this too, we had said that we wanted to highlight the brands that we like that aren't here or that don't have great distribution inside of Indianapolis, because we've used Indiana breweries, but Indiana, I think, is a bigger state than a lot of people give it credit for.
Sure.
Considering that
some of the first 3 breweries we used were
2+
farther
hours
away than street side
Yeah.
Cincinnati breweries were. Cincinnati's 2 hours away, but South Bend, Gary, Fort Wayne are all 2+.
But they distributed some here, right? And then Eric's had a Little Beaver shirt on, and they were
They're
wanting
2.5
to make-
hours away.
But they were wanting to make some more headway into the state when they reached out to us and said, hey, we've just gotten to Indiana. We're really trying to look for some better sell-through on our product. Do you guys think you could help us with that? Because one of the hardest things coming into a state where all these people are trying to come in at one time is, shelf equity, right? So you go into a liquor store of any kind and you look at the shelf. You've got your staple brands. I mean, and we joke about this all the time. We're a little spoiled. We have 18th Street and 3 Floyds everywhere. And there's states around the country that would just kill to have, our shelf turds that we just leave out and don't drink anymore because we're like, we've had them a million times. But then you go and you look at certain brands. Little Beaver has a beaver on all of their cans, and it's a little bit more cartoony.
Mm-hmm.
Why would somebody want to drink that? They don't really know what it is. So we said threefold. We want to bring brands we love to the state. We want to give voice to the people that can't get here for whatever reason within the state. So like the smaller micro-ish breweries that are doing really good product and aren't far from here, but their market awareness is next to none because they don't have the means. But if somebody wanted to go 45 minutes the same way they would for like 450 North or even Hoosier from here, those are 30, 45 minutes away. We've got Pax Verum that's really close here, somebody that we
love
talked
Jason
to, and
Colt.
I've known Colt for a little bit. My brother used to work with him. I never know how long Eric's known people. I just assume he knows everybody forever. But there's breweries like that are close that we're like, hey, we would love to give you a spotlight. And like with Little Beaver, we're like, hey, yeah, if your beer's good, nobody knows what it is, they want to try it on draft.
As long as we think the beer is good.
Yeah.
What I hope is that we eventually become the place that if nobody knows the people we're bringing in, they know that, oh, well, those guys like good beer.
You're not bringing bad beer.
We're not bringing bad beer in.
Definitely.
So
you're creating a culture of community, right? And I'm a big believer in this, that relationships transcend any transaction. And as that seems to be a common thread when I talk to everybody in this industry, is this sense of community. You guys are located in a very walkable location, and with respect to narrow gauge, Jeff, you probably have a community that's pretty closely up there. What does that word mean to you guys as you kind of develop this business model? What does community mean to you?
That's our business model.
yeah.
I don't even know how else to say it. I mean, he's 3.5 hours away, and I've been drinking his beer for 6 years.
We have two sides of community. We have our business relationship of community. We've been in beer for so long, and we're working with these people. But then we're also in a very neighborhood, walkie, like you said, neighborhood bar, where Xavier and I, funny enough, we both live in the exact same town. We live in the suburbs. We live in Plainfield. So we're like 25 minutes away. But, we're really invested. We're both family men, no matter how we look. We're going to, like, for Halloween, we're going to do out front. Like, there's kids that live in this neighborhood.
Right.
Even though we're just north of downtown. Like, we're going to do some Halloween stuff. We're going to hand out candy. We're going to hand out gift certificates to the adults for beer. And, like the people that we employ, we do 401ks. We do all sorts of stuff that's not a norm for a bar.
Standard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
we do guaranteed pay for both full-time and part-time, whether I don't even know if part-time even knows at this point that they have guaranteed pay. I tried to tell them it's their part-time job. Maybe they listened to me, maybe they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's our actual community. You talk about the people that are within
walking
a
distance.
10 to 15 minute walk of us, because that happens a lot. You talk about our staff and our employees as community, because
and family.
we don't have the time. He did it at first. Like he does this more now than he did when we started. But between his rental properties and his IT business, and he was literally distributing from basically Michigan to
Kentucky,
the fucking end of the boot in Indiana for bare hands. He was pretty wrapped up. I tell people since the pandemic, both of our wives are nurses, but my wife went into contract nursing, and I didn't have a job, right? Like, I ended up leaving Blackacre due to there was a fire and there was just some other things right before COVID, but I would have lasted another 3 weeks before I left, because COVID would have hit and they furloughed everybody anyway until they could figure out what they needed to do. And so I still wouldn't have had a job. So first and foremost, I'm actually a stay-at-home dad. Like that's my first job is now I had to figure out doctor's appointments and school shit and who needs haircuts and trying to figure out how to get everybody's laundry done and listen to everybody complain about cooking and all that. I didn't have time to be here really either. I just had more time to do stuff, and we sit in this room and everybody sees the TV and the couch and everything. I built this for my kids so I could bring them here and they could watch TV for 2 hours if I had to work. But without our staff, we couldn't do this. So we made sure that our full-time people they want a side hustle, that's on them, but this is their full-time job. We want them to be set up for now and in the future. And then our beer community, like we've said throughout this entire podcast, is people that we believe in and have a good product, even if they know they have a good product. If you ask Jeff, he's a pretty humble dude. He'll be like, yeah, we fucked some stuff. No, they're not a 4-2 because they make New England. They're a 4-2 because they make some of the best fucking beer in the Midwest. Like, it's not debatable. You ask him, cool. I'm glad that he doesn't have a head the size of the fucking room. But they make some of the best beer in the Midwest. But,
I appreciate that.
Between them and we've got some cool brands, but we want to support the people that we believe in and know that they do well. So I think community is always a very interesting.
And that's why we always go meet with everybody when we talk to a brewery, and if we haven't known them in some capacity, we kind of stop them at the, like, if logistically this will work for you, cool, but we're going to come talk to you, sit down with you, have a conversation, and make sure that, like, you're not a bad person too.
Right.
Like, you're not a bad, Jeff would contest to this that I text him way more than I probably should all the time.
I've talked way more this month than probably anyone.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And so, like, we have to make sure that, like, the relationship works, because if it doesn't, then you're basically entering a business partnership for not even 30 days, 45 to 60 days, really, planning. And
or
so
ask Chris from Windmill or Garrett from Streetside. We haven't left them alone.
No.
In almost the entire 2021 year. So it's just like
you're now our friends forever.
We don't have very many of those, so we just text you and say, hey, we're just going to come through and annoy you for a few hours. And most of the time, people don't tell us they're busy, so I think that's okay.
Could be. But again, like, coming into the place, and, like, if I go into a place and it's, like, just a bad vibe, like, we obviously don't want to work with you. Like, if there's been lots of cancel culture that's been going around, it's like, if whether that's good
that's the wrong term for everybody listening. While cancel culture is a thing in the industry, there's a lot of good reasons that people have been speaking up about brands that we have all loved, and then we find out how they do things and how they treat their people or how they interact with the community that are not okay. That's not cancel culture. That's justifiable canceled. I just want to make sure.
Perfect.
Okay.
Gotcha.
If you're just not if you don't vibe with us, if you're not about our same vision, we may not want to work with you, whether you make good beer or not.
Yeah.
Well, I love that word vision. So last question for you guys. And when I sit down with clients for the first time, and each time we meet, I like to use 3 years as a perspective. So when I sit down with somebody for the first time, I often ask them, if we were to meet again in 3 years, what do you want to see accomplished, either professionally, economically, emotionally, whatever, that if we meet again in 3 years, we can look back and say our time spent was valuable. As it pertains to the brand you're building here at a tap room, what do you want to see take place over the next 3 years that if we sat down again, you could look back and say, we're on the right path, we're creating a community here, we're doing everything we set out to do. What does that look like in your mind? And then, Jeff, you can give us a flavor of what you expect from Narrow Gauge for the next 3 years, kind of.
Sure.
So for me, it looks like bringing brand awareness to Indiana for brands that aren't here.
Mm-hmm.
Giving our employees and staff, this industry doesn't really, especially bartenders and things like that, don't normally have people that think about future. Their paycheck, what's today, what's tomorrow, and that's about it. Not what's in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. If you want to go to college, if you want to invest in whatever, How can I, if this is what you want to do for the rest of your life, awesome. If this is not what you want to do for the rest of your life, tell me what it is. Let me help you get there. That's number 2. And then I think number 3 would just be have a good time, because life's too short. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that I have that is either more specific to what Eric said and or just a little bit different is I've worked at places, and I know he's worked at places. I've been going to breweries from the inception. DV8 always comes to mind. I remember when I used to go in there and there was 4 people in there, and I'm like, these are some of the best stouts I've ever had, ever. And I'm incredibly picky. And then I see them now, and they've been able to double their floor plan. They have bottle releases. They have all this shit, and I know that they make it. And the sense and pride of making something. I tried to brew beer. I'm bad at it. I know I'm bad at it. I can't do it. But I've always wanted to bring a unique product to people, just personally, whether it's like food or drink or whatever it is. And I keep making jokes that we're the Amazon or the drop shipping of the beer world, because we're just bringing other people's shit in. But it's stuff that I have spent my money, thousands of my own dollars on, my time, finding childcare, doing all this stuff. So I think for me, and Eric kind of mentioned it a little bit before, where people just kind of trust us that we're bringing good stuff in. I want to be able to walk in any given day and there be no empty seat in my bar. Not from a money standpoint. I don't care if everything on the menu that day is $2. I don't care if the only thing everybody's drinking is Underberg and not even the beer that we have on draft that day. It is appalling how much Underberg we sell, which is why that's just a fun joke. But I think for me, if 3 years from now, whether it's this building, whether we have to get a bigger building, whether we have to, do whatever it is, I hope we've built such a sense of community and trust in our vision that I can walk in almost any day during peak times of restaurant timing, and my seats aren't empty, that people are enjoying themselves, that they're coming in and they're getting to appreciate an idea while being a joke. How many times have we heard it, man? Like, every time somebody comes in, like, why hasn't somebody else thought of that before? We're like, they have thought of it before, but
it's a logistical nightmare.
This
is a logistical nightmare.
Nobody's insane enough to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's yeah. If you talk to anybody that we've worked with, I don't think anybody's going to badmouth us, but they're going to be like, those guys are a lot. Because that's just how we operate.
Like it's a tough business concept in general.
Yeah, it's just it's so much change, it's so much education, it's so much. If it wasn't passion, there's no reason for anybody to do this. And whether I make,
we're gonna ask Jeff to do this again next year, and we're gonna do double dry hop wide band.
Yeah.
That's what we're.
That's all we're gonna order for the whole month. We're gonna have double dry hop wide band.
And hot water.
I want
And hot water.
Yeah, gotta get that hot water. I gotta try that now. I gotta try that.
Same beer, 12 different adjuncts.
We'll do
every
October
tap.
again next year.
But,
How about you, Jeff? What do you think about that question?
3 years from now, that's tough. Like, we have a lot of stuff.
He's got a lot of things in the fire.
As far as like relocation efforts and whatnot, but
they have a building. They have a building like right next to the.
Yeah, not Eric.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
No, I know this.
No, like we bought a space a couple doors down. We've been trying to move into a little bit. We've had some snafus with some of the infrastructure to the building that's delayed us quite a bit. So we're damn near a year past what we thought we would be in that building. But 3 years from now, hopefully we're there. If we're not, then we probably don't have that building anymore, which is fine too. Or we're doing something else with it. But I would say overall, like 3 years as a business for us, it's kind of continue doing what we're doing. So we've kind of like chased the let's do what we can to gain a name for ourselves type thing. But I think over the duration of the next few years, it's more like back to the basics, do this stuff. What I got into the industry for, so making the beers I want to make, regardless of if that's what people want or not.
Sure.
As long as enough people are willing to back that. Like, I got into brewing beer because I enjoyed the science, I enjoyed the different styles, I enjoyed all that. And I definitely got hung up in the forefront of our brewery in regards to like making the beers that we were making in order to keep up with demand where we were, which was great. Like, I will never complain about that ever because it has paved our way as a brewery, but more getting back to the basics of the reasoning of why I started a brewery, doing it more for myself than for, I guess, everyone else around.
Sure.
And hopefully enough people support that.
For sure. Bring us home, Eddie. What are your perspectives from the distribution side?
He's the oldest one on the couch.
Yeah, well, in the building maybe. But, no, it's just continuing to work with great people and bring people together.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's a great way to end this, gentlemen. Cheers. Thanks for sitting down.
Cheers. My beer's empty, so
Yeah, let's go. If you're downtown Indianapolis, come down to Delaware Street, check out a tap room. And if you're in a suburb of St. Louis and Florescent, check out Narrow Gauge, man. I've enjoyed the shit out of this, man. This is great beer. All right. Catch you on the next one. Later, folks.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Right on, gents. That was fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. For the latest on financial views with local brews, please check out our website at financialviewswithlocalbrews.com. You can also find us on YouTube via our channel there under the same name, Financial Views with Local Brews, as well as follow us on all of our social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, where you can like and connect with us throughout the craft beer universe that we're trying to explore here in the great state of Indiana. As always, cheers. The next round's on me, and I look forward to seeing you for future episodes. Bye, everyone.